Okay, let's talk about a palette that really brought me #regrets. So today's video idea was actually something different to begin with, and then I kind of sat down to do it and I was like, oh, we're gonna have to switch this up. So originally my idea was to get all of the makeup that I've kind of bought over the last 6 months that I've shown you guys, I've reviewed this year or whatever, and kind of do a recap of all of that new makeup and do like a speed review of each product, just to give you guys an updated, like, I've been testing this makeup for quite some time now and I really want to share my updated thoughts on these products, because I know a lot of the times we see people review products and they're like, I love it or I hate it, and then 6 months down the track it's like, wait, does that product still exist? What did you actually think about it? You know, that kind of a thing. Anyway, so I sat down to actually film that kind of a video and I started collecting all of the makeup products that I have like purchased over the last 6 months, and I was like just started with the eyeshadow palettes and I was like, oh, this is extremely embarrassing, because one, I have purchased so much makeup this year, and two, like, just, I haven't even looked at the other categories yet, I don't even want to, but just from eyeshadow palettes alone I have one video. Basically on my desk here is all of the eyeshadow palettes that I've bought over the last 6 months, at least the ones that I can remember that I've bought over the last 6 months, and I'm going to try and give you guys a quick little minute review on each one of them, what I think about them now. Some of them you've seen dedicated videos for, some of them might be like mini reviews on my Instagram, some of them you might not even have known that I purchased this year, but I feel like I've talked about nearly all of these on my channel, so you should. Hopefully that sounds interesting to you. If it does, make sure you stick around. If you enjoy the video, you can subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. It means the absolute world to me, but if not, all good. So I'm going to start with the cheapest eyeshadow palette that I brought into my collection this year, and it is the e.l.f. Bite Size palette in the colour Rosewater, and this was $7 Australian, so very, very cheap, and it's just kind of like a cute little pinky mauvey palette. Very, very pretty. Now I have done a look using this palette. I'll link the video up there and down below. It was kind of like a first impressions with like a Patrick Tile blush and that kind of a thing, and a foundation, and I will say that I have not actually used this eyeshadow palette since that video, so there you go. That tells you how much I have really kind of taken to this palette. Not necessarily because the shadows are bad or anything in this palette, they're actually quite pretty. The mattes, I will say, in this formula are not my all-time favorite. I've definitely got a lot more mattes in my collection than I prefer, but I will say that the shimmers in these palettes are absolutely stunning, and I can definitely see the appeal in kind of collecting these little bite-sized palettes, because they are so teeny tiny. They're like perfect to just throw in your bag, especially if you've got like that day to night thing or you're traveling. I can see, when we can travel again, I can see the appeal in these. However, I think if you're just going to purchase these for the sake of like the fact that they're $7, I'd just kind of save up your money and get something that you really want, rather than for the sake of buying it because it's cheap. But if you are looking for kind of like a forecourt eyeshadow palette and you don't want to spend a lot of money, these are actually quite good quality, so there you go. The next up is actually 4 palettes, because I kind of got them all together, and I will say that I did not actually purchase these palettes myself. I actually won them in a giveaway, which is like the first giveaway I have probably ever won in my entire life, and it was like a NYX Cosmetics giveaway. So they gifted me the Phoenix Ultimate palette, which is just the most beautiful kind of like pumpkin spice palette in my mind. This one is my favorite. This is the Ultimate Utopia palette, and it's not the big one. The big one has not come to Australia, which is really disappointing, because I actually really like a lot of the colors in that big Ultimate Utopia palette. However, this one is really, really pretty as well. They also gifted me the Ultimate Brights palette, which this one has been around for quite some time, as well as the Ultimate Warm Neutrals palette, which is again kind of like almost a cool tony, or like in the middle of cool tone and warm tone shadows. Now I'm super grateful to have won these palettes, because I've actually been wanting to try them for quite some time, and a couple of their color schemes are really, really beautiful to me, particularly these two right here. I really, really like these color schemes, and I think the shimmer shades in these palettes are gorgeous, particularly this one here, because this is the one I've played with the most. This shade here is stunning. It is the most beautiful kind of gold shade, and this like mint shade, is that it? Yep. This mint shade and this blue shade right here, honestly, they are very, very, very beautiful shades. The mattes in this NYX formula that I've tried across these palettes, I will say hasn't completely wowed me, but in saying that, it's not necessarily a terrible quality. It's just they haven't blown me away like something like Colourpop mattes, for example. And to be honest, in Australian dollars with the conversion rate, Colourpop is cheaper than NYX Cosmetics eyeshadow palettes, which I know is absolutely insane, but it really is. So I would probably recommend purchasing, say, a Colourpop eyeshadow palette than I would over a NYX eyeshadow palette from what I've tested, unless it was a specific color scheme that you were after, like this Ultimate Utopia palette, for example. I think this color scheme is really unique and beautiful. But in saying that, if you are going to pick it up, wait until it goes on sale for 30 to 50% off, because I think these are 38 Australian dollars for this palette in like non-discount times, and I don't believe it is worth that for a drugstore palette. Next up on the palettes that I've purchased this year is the Colourpop Wild Nothing palette, and if you have seen my review or you have seen my recent video, which was Christmas gift ideas in price categories, you would know exactly how I feel about this palette, and it is that I absolutely freaking adore it. This is nearly the palette of the year for me. I mean, I've still got, you know, there's still a month to go, so I'm not going to call that just yet, but so far this is one of the best palettes I have tried this year. I think this palette is stunning, and I know my lights are too bright for you guys to kind of see that, but oh my goodness, this palette, this shade right here, and this shade right here, oh, the most beautiful suspended glitters, and even the shimmer shades in the middle here, like they're just absolutely stunning. The mattes are stunning. This is the most perfect eyeshadow palette for every single day wear, for glam wear, if you're going to a wedding, if you're going club, whatever it is that you're doing in your life, this is a perfect palette for you. And unless you are probably a deeper skin tone, I don't actually think this palette would suit that, but Colourpop does have a range of palettes, and they would have one that would suit a deeper skin tone. But if you are my skin tone, this is an absolutely, you just can't go past this palette. It's so beautiful, honestly. Okay, let's talk about a palette that really brought me #regrets, and that is the Morphe 24M Main Event palette. Now I'm going to review this palette not based on its collaborators, but just purely based on the palette itself. So if you're a fan of the collaborators of this palette, I'm sorry, but I'm purely basing this off my opinion of the quality of the palette. But the 24M palette for me drew me in first off because of its color scheme and the different textures available in this palette, particularly because this bottom row is like water activated liners, and I was just like, what? I really need to try this in my life because that sounds like my jam. This palette to me is not great quality. The mattes in here I find are not the best mattes that I have personally tried, and I know in the video review that I did of this I kind of talked about it, and I talked about how I had to do my look so many times over, and I should have included that footage, but I lost the footage because my hard drive crapped itself, so I couldn't actually show the footage of how poorly these mattes were performing, which was kind of annoying, so you just kind of have to take my word for it. But yeah, I just don't personally think that the mattes in this palette are great. I think the shimmer shades in this palette are beautiful. Like this shade right here is really pretty. This shade, any of the shimmer shades, gorgeous. And even the glitters, like this one right here, and this one, and this one. If you are into glitter, like chunky glitters on your eyes, then you know you're gonna really like that because they do exactly what you want them to do. These water activated liners were a bit meh, hit and miss. Some of them like built up beautifully, some of them really didn't build up at all. So yeah, I don't recommend this one at all, and I actually wish I could go back in time and not purchase this, to be completely honest with you. So a palette that I definitely don't regret purchasing is the Maddie Ziegler Imagination palette from Morphe. This is a gorgeous palette. I love the color scheme. I think that they did a fantastic job picking out the colors of this particular palette. I love this kind of pastel bright color row. I love these two neutral rows. They're just so pretty. This color right here, which is called Kenny, is the most gorgeous like burnt orange color. It's stunning. This purple, which I'm not a massive purple fan, but this Posse color, holy crap, this on the eyes is like the best purple shimmer I have ever used in my entire life. Like it's so beautiful, at least of that shade. Go home, honestly, just this entire palette. I think this palette was $24 or something ridiculous, and it's just, I would purchase it over and over and over again. Okay, so next up is the Beauty Bay Bright Matte palette, which is this ginormous palette. It's like bigger than my head. It is so big. And I purchased this palette because actually online I thought these shades were a lot more pastel-y than what they actually are in person. But I also liked that basically I was like, if I purchase this palette, I am going to have every single colorful color I could ever need in a shadow ever, and it's like a one and done, I'll never need to purchase it again kind of a thing. And I got the palette on a discount, so I think it worked out to be like this palette was like $20 or something ridiculously cheap. So for like 42 shades, I was like, it's mine, it's gotta come home. I did a daylight tutorial video using this eyeshadow palette. I'll link all these videos like down below and somewhere up there. And I haven't really used this. I have used it a couple of times since, but not a whole lot, because honestly, I don't find the quality of these shadows to be absolutely incredible. I think that you really need to finesse them and work with them to kind of get the best use out of them, which was a little bit disappointing. And I don't find them to be super pigmented, and they have a crap load of fallout. So I don't think they're bad, and I think for the price point, like the fact that I paid like $20 or something like that for these 42 shades, I'm totally fine with it and I'm happy to have it in my collection, but I wouldn't pay any more of that. Also, if ginormous palettes that are the size of your head are not your thing, then you won't like this palette either. So moving upwards to our higher end palettes, and I picked up these next two palettes in a sale at the start of the year. The first one is the Soft Glam palette, and this one is gorgeous. It is an every single day wearable palette. You can, again, like kind of speaking before how I was talking about the Wild Nothing palette being like an everyday palette that you can take from work to shopping to brunch to dinners to clubbing to wedding to whatever. This is like the high-end version of that, and it is probably a little bit more suited to a lot more skin tones. Probably like a deep skin tone might not be able to get as much wear out of this, but it's more suitable than say like your Wild Nothing. But the colors in here are just phenomenal. The quality, this is like modern Renaissance quality. So if that's what you're looking for, like if you love modern Renaissance and you want something that's just like a neutral everyday kind of palette, this is your girl. She's great. Pigmented, like a little bit of fallout, but not like subculture fallout. The shimmers are beautiful. The metallics are beautiful. It is a really nice palette. And then in that sale as well, I picked up the Novena Volume 3 palette. I picked this up because I loved the colors in here. I don't really have a lot of greens in my collection, so the greens in here were really speaking to me, and same with the oranges and the purples. I don't know, and it was just also had a lot of neutral colors so that I felt like I could wear it and work it into my everyday life. I really like this palette as well, you guys. Again, it is a bigger palette, so if you're not into big palettes, it's not for you. The metallics and the shimmers in here, stunning, like stunning. A lot of these colors, like the brighter colors, are pressed pigments, so you do really need to know how to work and finesse a pressed pigment to kind of work with this palette in the best way. So I would say that if you're not used to working with pressed pigments and you kind of just want an easy no fuss palette, it's probably not for you. But if you don't mind working with pressed pigments and you kind of enjoy these brighter colors, this is a really cool palette. Okay, so we're on the home stretch. We only have 3 palettes to go. Now next up is the Huda Beauty Naughty palette, which I just recently did a review on my channel. It's obviously a new release, so I just picked it up only a few weeks ago. And I picked up this palette because, to be completely honest with you, the color scheme draws me in. When I originally saw the photos online, it didn't really draw me in. I thought to myself, that's a beautiful palette and I'm interested in those formulas, but it just seems to be something that I already have in my collection. And then I saw it in real life and I was blown away. And even my partner was like, oh no, that palette's like really pretty. And I was like, okay, well, you know, if he's saying it is, it's pretty. So I picked up the palette. I know this slippery shade was like the controversial shade. It looks weird now that I've kind of like played with it. And to be completely honest with you, I don't enjoy that shade at all. I will never probably use it again because it's just pointless to me. The rest of these shimmer shades are beautiful, like they're gorgeous. And this here is like a almost cream matte, I would call it, is like a cream matte, and it is very pretty all over the eyes. It's like a dark brown smoky eye. And then the rest of these metallics are beautiful. I did see someone saying, well, you're going to get an even color with these marbled shades on your eyes because they are marbled, and I haven't personally noticed that you get an uneven color. I think the mattes in here are her best quality mattes that she has released to date. I really love the new nude palette, but I think that these mattes are even better than that, and I just love the tones of these browns. They're just like perfect for everyday wear. I will say the price point is quite high. I used a $50 gift voucher that I got like from my credit card points, so I didn't actually pay full price for this. In Australia, it's like $115, which is like only $4 cheaper than Natasha Denona like Glam palette or something like that, and I wouldn't, well actually I haven't tried a Natasha Denona palette in a really long time, but I'd probably want to say that the quality is not quite as good as Natasha Denona, but I could be wrong. So I do think Huda's kind of getting up there with her price point on her eyeshadow palettes, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend picking it up full price, but she does have sales throughout the year on her eyeshadow palette, so I would keep an eye out for those sales, and if it's something that you are wanting to pick up eventually and you see it on sale, that's what I would recommend for this particular palette, to be honest. And the last two palettes that I purchased this year, one was a gift and one I purchased myself, is my two beloved Pat McGrath palettes. This one here, Midnight Sun, was a gift, and Divine Rose I purchased in her 35% off sale she had last month, and I love them both so much. I do. I love them both. I have to admit, if I had to pick a child that I love more, it would be the Midnight Sun palette. I love this Midnight Sun palette so much, you guys. This palette is my baby. Honestly, it's my favorite palette in my collection. Don't let the others hear that. I love them all, obviously, but this really is my favorite palette of all time. It is so gorgeous. I love the shades in here. I love the unique formulas, especially these 4 shades on the end. I love the mattes. I've even started using this color here as my brow color because I've been finding it really hard to find a brow tone that kind of suits me, and Pat pulled through for me. So, you know, multi-use. It was $200 this palette, so I'm going to get the multi-use out of it, I can assure you. But yeah, Midnight Sun is definitely my favorite. However, Divine Rose is also a very, very beautiful option. I think it's gorgeous. I think the lighting's not going to do these palettes justice today, but this one is really pretty. This shade right here, oh my goodness, in real life, that all over the lid and in the inner corner is so beautiful. And I did use these purple shades the other day as like just an all over kind of smoky purple eye, and they were very, very beautiful. My only complaint, actually I have 2 complaints about this palette. One is that the 2 mattes in here are too close in undertone and tone, so they don't add enough depth with each other to really create a look without using another palette for mattes. My other complaint, and it is a pretty big complaint, is that this is the exact same color, Astral Solstice, as what is in the Midnight Sun palette, and that absolutely pisses me off that I have purchased a palette that has a dupe shade. That is my only gripe about the Pat McGrath palettes, is that dupe shade really, and just those mattes in the Divine Rose. Okay, so that is all of the eyeshadow palettes that I've kind of purchased over the last like 6 to 8 months, I think it is. I'm also going to do the other categories of this video that I have purchased for newer makeup. I saw how many palettes I had purchased and I was like, this is going to be way too long of a video as it is. So make sure you subscribe if you want to see those videos. Let me know in the comments down below, do you have any of these palettes? Did you pick up any of these palettes from watching my videos? What are your thoughts? What are your favorites? What have you purchased this year that you've been loving / hating? Let me know in the comments down below. You know how much I love hearing from you guys. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe, hit that notification bell. I appreciate it so, so much, especially if you're watching till this point. You are a legend. I hope you have an amazing day wherever you are in the world, and I will see you next time. Bye!